On a desolate stretch of road cutting through a dense forest, there existed a local legend that had terrified the nearby towns for decades. The road, known as Blackwood Highway, was infamous for its sharp turns, thick fog, and eerie silence. But its true terror lay in the legend of the Phantom of the Highway, a malevolent spirit said to haunt the road and prey on unsuspecting travelers. It was a moonless night when a group of friends, returning from a weekend trip, decided to take a shortcut through Blackwood Highway. The group consisted of 5 college students: Alex, Maria, David, Lisa, and Sam. They laughed and chatted, oblivious to the impending horror that awaited them. As they ventured deeper into the forest, an unnatural chill enveloped the air, and the dense fog thickened around them. "Do you guys feel that?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling slightly. "It's so cold all of a sudden." "Yeah, it's like we just drove into a freezer," Sam replied, his breath visible in the air. David, who was driving, turned on the heater, but it seemed to have no effect. The car's radio, which had been playing cheerful music, began to emit static. Suddenly, the headlights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the road ahead. "What the hell is going on?" David muttered, trying to focus on the winding road. As they rounded a particularly sharp bend, they saw a figure standing in the middle of the road. David slammed on the brakes, and the car skidded to a halt, barely missing the figure. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered white gown, her long, black hair covering her face. She stood motionless, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Is she okay?" Maria whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Alex rolled down his window and called out, "Hey, do you need help?" The woman slowly lifted her head, revealing a grotesque, blood-soaked face with empty eye sockets. Her mouth twisted into a sinister smile, and she let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the forest. The friends screamed in unison, and David frantically put the car in reverse, trying to get away from the horrifying figure. As they backed up, the woman vanished into the fog. "What the hell was that?" Maria cried, tears streaming down her face. "Drive. Just drive," Alex yelled, but when David tried to accelerate, the car refused to move. It was as if some invisible force held it in place. The surrounding fog grew thicker, and the temperature dropped even further, their breaths now coming out in panicked gasps. From the fog emerged more figures, all with the same blood-soaked faces and empty eye sockets. They surrounded the car, their screams merging into a cacophony of terror. The friends huddled together, shaking with fear, as the figures began to pound on the car windows with bloodied hands, leaving streaks of red across the glass. "Please make it stop," Lisa sobbed, covering her ears to block out the deafening screams. Just then, the car's engine roared to life on its own. David seized the opportunity and floored the accelerator. The car shot forward, plowing through the figures, who dissipated into mist as they were struck. They sped down the road, the screams fading into the distance. After what felt like an eternity, they burst out of the fog and back onto the main highway. The temperature returned to normal, and the night seemed almost peaceful compared to the horror they had just experienced. They didn't stop driving until they reached the safety of their town, where they immediately reported the incident to the authorities. The police investigated, but found no evidence of the figures or the bloodstains the friends swore had covered their car. The legend of the Phantom of the Highway was dismissed as just that, a legend. But the friends knew the truth. They had encountered something evil on Blackwood Highway, something that defied explanation. And they were not the last. In the years that followed, more travelers would vanish or turn up dead on that same stretch of road. Their bodies found with expressions of unspeakable terror, their faces bloodied and their eyes empty. The Phantom of the Highway continued to haunt the road, a malevolent spirit driven by a hunger for the souls of the living. For those who dared to travel Blackwood Highway on a moonless night, the warnings were clear. Beware the fog, fear the chill, and never, ever stop for the figures in white. The friends couldn't shake the terror of that night. Weeks passed, but the nightmares persisted, haunted by the blood-soaked faces and hollow eyes. Alex, Maria, David, Lisa, and Sam rarely spoke of it, each trying to bury the memory deep within their minds. One evening, David received a call from Alex. "Hey man, we need to talk," Alex said, his voice trembling. They met at a local diner, the atmosphere tense. "I've been doing some research," Alex began, "about Blackwood Highway. There are records of similar incidents dating back decades. People disappearing, accidents, sightings of the phantom. Why would you dig into this?" Lisa asked, visibly shaken. "Isn't it bad enough we lived it?" "I had to know," Alex insisted. "There's something more to this. The phantom is a spirit, yes, but I think there's a way to stop it." Sam leaned forward, intrigued. "What did you find?" "There's an old story about a woman named Eleanor Blackwood," Alex explained. "She was a bride-to-be who died in a car crash on her wedding day, right on that highway. Some say her spirit never found peace, and now she haunts the road, seeking revenge on the living." "We should just let it go," Maria said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We survived. We don't need to get involved." But the others weren't so sure. A part of them wanted closure, an end to the nightmares. Reluctantly, they agreed to investigate further. They needed answers, and if there was a way to end the haunting, they felt compelled to try. They gathered supplies, flashlights, cameras, and a recorder to capture any paranormal activity. As night fell, they drove back to Blackwood Highway, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The road was just as eerie as they remembered, cloaked in an oppressive silence. As they ventured deeper, the familiar chill set in, and the fog thickened around them. David parked the car near the site of the supposed crash, the same spot where they had encountered the phantom. "All right, let's split up," Alex suggested. "We'll cover more ground that way. Keep your radios on and stay in touch." They nodded and spread out, each stepping cautiously into the fog. Lisa stayed near the car, her hands trembling as she held a flashlight. She felt a presence, an unseen gaze watching her every move. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed through the night. It was Maria. The group converged on her location, finding her standing rigid, her eyes wide with terror, pointing to the ground. There, partially buried in the dirt, was an old, blood-stained wedding dress. "This must be Eleanor's," Maria whispered, her voice shaking. "We need to give it a proper burial. Maybe that will bring her peace." They carefully gathered the dress and returned to the car. As they prepared to leave, the fog grew even thicker, enveloping them in an impenetrable blanket. The temperature plummeted, their breaths visible in the freezing air. From the mist, the figures emerged once more, their hollow eyes fixated on the group. The friends huddled together, clutching the dress. "Eleanor Blackwood," Alex called out, his voice strong despite the fear. "We know your story. We have your dress. We want to help you find peace." The figures paused, their eerie wails softening to whispers. A spectral form appeared before them, more defined than the others. A woman in a tattered white gown, her face a mask of sorrow. "Please," she whispered, her voice echoing through the night. "I want to rest." Alex stepped forward, holding the dress. "We will bury this, Eleanor. We hope it will set you free." They found a small clearing and began to dig. The ground was hard and cold, but they worked quickly, driven by the urgency of the moment. As they placed the dress into the earth, the fog began to lift, and the temperature slowly returned to normal. The figures faded into the mist, and Eleanor's sorrowful form gave one last, lingering look of gratitude before dissolving into the night. The friends stood in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. As they drove away from Blackwood Highway, a sense of calm washed over them. They felt they had done something good, something necessary. The nightmares lessened, and the legend of the phantom of the highway began to fade, replaced by whispers of a spirit finally at rest. But for those who dared to travel the road on a moonless night, the warnings remained. The highway held many secrets, and though Eleanor's spirit found peace, others still lingered, their stories yet untold, waiting in the shadows for the next unwary traveler. Months passed, and life slowly returned to normal for Alex, Maria, David, Lisa, and Sam. The experience on Blackwood Highway became a memory they rarely discussed, each dealing with their lingering fears in their own way. They believed they had done their part to help Eleanor Blackwood find peace, and for a time, the haunting seemed to cease. One evening, As the friends gathered for a quiet dinner, Alex received a call from the local historian he had been consulting during his research. "You need to come to the archives," the historian said urgently. "There's something you need to see." Curiosity piqued, Alex convinced the group to join him. At the archives, the historian, an elderly man named Mr. Hawthorne, greeted them with a somber expression. He led them to a secluded room where old newspaper clippings and records were spread across a table. "I've been digging deeper into the history of Blackwood Highway," Mr. Hawthorne began. "It seems Eleanor Blackwood's tragic story is just the beginning. There were many other mysterious deaths and disappearances on that road, some even predating her accident." He handed them a stack of old photographs, each depicting a different individual who had perished on the highway. The faces in the photos shared the same haunted expression they had seen on Eleanor's ghostly visage. "These spirits," Mr. Hawthorne continued, "are restless, bound to the highway by their violent deaths. Eleanor may have found peace, but the others remain." A chill ran down their spines as they realized the gravity of the situation. The haunting were not over. They had merely paused. The spirits of Blackwood Highway were still trapped in their torment, seeking release. "We have to go back," Alex said, his voice filled with determination. "We need to help the others too." With a renewed sense of purpose, the friends gathered supplies for another trip to the highway. This time, they brought more than just tools. They brought resolve and an understanding of what needed to be done. They planned to honor each spirit, hoping it would bring them the peace they deserved. As they arrived at Blackwood Highway, the familiar fog greeted them, dense and foreboding. They set up a small camp near the site where they had buried Eleanor's dress. Armed with old records and photographs, they began a somber ritual, calling out the names of the deceased and placing markers in their memory. The air grew colder, and the fog thickened, but the friends pressed on. They spoke words of comfort, asking the spirits to find peace and move on. As they worked, the spectral figures began to appear, drawn by the voices of the living. One by one, the spirits emerged from the mist, their hollow eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and hope. The friends continued their ritual, placing personal items and flowers at each marker, offering prayers and apologies for the violent ends these souls had met. As they completed the last memorial, the air grew still. The fog began to lift, revealing a clear night sky filled with stars. The spectral figures stood silently, their faces slowly transforming from anguish to tranquility. One by one, they began to fade, their forms dissolving into the night. The friends watched in awe as the final spirit, a young man with a sorrowful gaze, gave them a nod of gratitude before disappearing. The oppressive chill lifted, replaced by a gentle warmth that spread through the forest. For the first time in decades, Blackwood Highway felt at peace. The haunting ceased, and the road, once a place of terror, became just another stretch of pavement through the forest. As they packed up to leave, Alex turned to his friends, a sense of fulfillment washing over him. "We did it," he said. "We helped them." David nodded, a rare smile on his face. "Let's hope it stays this way." They drove away from Blackwood Highway, leaving the haunted past behind them. The legend of the Phantom of the Highway faded into history, a tale of tragedy and redemption that would be told for generations. For the friends, life moved on, but they carried with them the memory of the spirits they had helped to free. They knew the road held many secrets, but they had faced their fears and brought light to a place of darkness. And for that, they would always be grateful. The road remained a solemn reminder of the past, but it was no longer a place of terror. It was a testament to the power of compassion and the enduring hope that even the most restless spirits could find peace.